Sorry, it took
Perfect.
me a few minutes more than. Sorry for the delay.
You are perfectly fine. You're perfectly fine. I was more concerned
Okay,
that there wasn't anything
great.
wrong with the setup. I know some professor
No,
and
it's
I
great.
would have such
Mhm.
difficulty trying to get the system to work. So I'm glad that you could join me, and I really do appreciate it. By the way, how do I pronounce your name? Is it
No
Dr.
problem.
Sitara Sardeki? Sadeki?
Yes, pretty close. Yes, Setareh, Sadeqi. Yeah, very good.
Okay, well, wait a minute. No, repeat it for me. I just want to make sure, because I'm horrible with names.
Oh no, you did it pretty good actually. So it's Setareh, Sadeqi.
Okay, Satare Sadeki. Satare Sadeki. All right. I
Yes.
want to introduce my audience to you. Let me get this straight. And here we are. And this. All right. We're joined with Dr. Satare Sadeki. She is an associate professor at the Facility of World Studies University in Tehran, where she earned her PhD in North American Studies. You have no idea how much that enamors me. It's like a Spanish student. It's like being in Mexico and somebody says, "What do you study?" And I say, "I study Spanish." It feels like that. Or it's like you're studying the country that I'm coming from. It's fascinating to me. Iran relations, media, narrative,
Yeah.
and political communication. It says she actively bridges academia and public discourse as co-host of Twice Told Tales podcast, exploring geopolitical dynamics affecting Iran, a frequent speaker and moderator in international conferences. Dr. Sadeqi is committed to fostering dialogue on Iran's global role. And you are a perfect guest considering what is going on in the world. So, welcome to the show, and thank you again for joining me. Um,
Thank you for having me.
I would like to start with something that has been a confusion for myself, and I think for many people in the West, and it has to do with the political system in Tehran. Like how does the, let's say, Ayatollah fit in with the government, and where do the powers overlap?
Mm.
And the reason I'm asking this, Ayatollah in the very beginning made the point of saying you can't trust the U.S. To which I said he gets it. That guy's right. But it was very clear that Pezeshkian did want to negotiate. In which case I was confused because my thought was, and many people in the U.S. thought, well, the Ayatollah is the one who controls it all. And it became clear that that wasn't the case. There was more of a overlap in some way. It wasn't just one man controlling all of the events of the country. It was more complicated than that. Try to, for a Western audience, help us understand this to some degree in a way that better helps us understand. That sounds weird. Help us understand this in some degree.
Yeah, I mean, what you shared is very common in the West, even among people who do want to know more about what's going on. People from the so-called left that have a critical, viewpoint of the U.S. imperialism and the U.S. You know, um, the US description of other countries and other nations. When it
Right.
comes to Iran, many people still like to call it a theocracy, an Islamist regime, and all those, an authoritarian regime, all those, I would say, imperialist labels that seek to delegitimize an independent government that has found a unique way of practicing democracy and um, reflecting the willpower and the determination of its people. So if we do not have an exact copy of the Western system of practicing diplomacy then and democracy, then we're quickly labeled as being illegitimate, as a regime,
Yeah.
which is, or at best, as a theocracy. I don't even agree with the word theocracy to describe Iran's political system because, yes, we have a religious leader as the head of the state, but that religious leader is like voted for and elected by other people who are elected by the public. So it's we do not directly vote for the supreme leader or the leader. I would not even use the word supreme leader because it wants to it's not only showing that he's the top person, but it kind of wants to imply that he's the ultimate power and no one can say no to him, when in fact there is a body that supervises what he does, and if they want to appoint a new leader and change him, they can do that, and those other bodies are elected by the people. So yes, we practice democracy in a different way, but it's still what the people are voting for.
Just to be clear, though, and I hate to interrupt, sorry, but it's in his title, Supreme Leader, right?
I think it's not a perfect translation from the Farsi, because the word that we use in Farsi is we say, for example, I would say the grand leader, or the yeah, of the leader, the grand leader of the Islamic Revolution. That's how we call him. So because the Islamic Revolution started by Imam Khomeini, I know many
Right.
people confuse Imam Khomeini with Imam Khamenei too, which who was a different person, and it's sometimes funny catching these Western Iran experts using the same name for both leaders.
I
One
know the
has
difference.
passed away many years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was the founder of the Islamic revolution. He led people's uprising against a dictator. But we believe that this revolution is going still working towards the achievement of its ideals and of its values. We have not reached the last step where we want to be, but we are trying to be there. And for that movement, for the Islamic Revolution, we need a leader, and that leader should reflect the will of the people. And that's where I would answer your question about how, for example, position negotiate with the US, because as I said, we have three, just like the US, we have the three different branches of, forgot the word, the judiciary, the executive branch, and the legislative branch,
Right.
right? You have the same thing. And the highest position in the US that endorsed the results of so the Supreme Court more or less has the same function in some ways, has a similar function as the top leader has in Iran, right? For example, and some sort of practice. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yes, if the people of Iran want to negotiate with the US, then they will go vote for a president that in his presidential campaign has made it clear that he wants to negotiate with the US because he thinks that's the way to improve the economy, even though we had once before been proven wrong. Like, we tried to negotiate with the US, we agreed on the JCPOA because we thought that would bring some economic ease and relief from the sanctions. But we were betrayed by the US once again, and the US just unilaterally withdrew from the deal. But again, because there was this public demand, even though a lot of people had learned from the previous experience, but because
Right.
that was the discourse that was being pushed by the political party that was ruling the country, we were able to negotiate with the US. the leader allows for that. I mean, he doesn't interfere. If the president wants to try that, okay. If you think, but you need to, he sets the red lines. Okay, you want to negotiate with the US, you can do that, but you're not going to compromise the revolutionary
Okay.
values. You're not going to compromise our defense capabilities. That's the red lines. You are allowed to practice that, but as the leader, certain red lines for you that would not compromise the entire, like, for example, defense capabilities. Because as you know, one of the things that were mentioned by the US and European partners was that Iran should negotiate over its missile program.
Right.
And that was like a big no. No, the leader would not allow that to happen.
Wow. I'm fascinated by this interplay. It's just, is there a situation where the government could override Ayatollah? Or not so much? Like, as you pointed out, he sets the red lines. So his.
Sorry, I did not hear you for a few
Oh, I'm
seconds.
sorry. No, no, you're fine. I'm asking, is there any situation where the government could override the will of the Ayatollah? I mean, ultimately, he may not, let's say, intrude, but he does set, these are the boundaries of debate. These are the boundaries of where we're willing to go and nothing beyond this point. But when he sets that down, that's it. That's the red line. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow. That's fascinating. So the public.
Yes, I think that's fair to say it is.
Oh, no, no. Go ahead. There's a lag. I'm sorry.
For example, as you mentioned, he made it clear. Yeah, I don't know why
It's
there's.
okay. It happens.
Yeah, for example, with the negotiations with the US, he made it clear that he does not trust the US, and we have been betrayed.
Yes.
But if the government wants to negotiate with them, okay, they can go ahead and negotiate with them. But it will be only on our nuclear program and not our defense capabilities, which included the missile program. So, because that's where we could have become very vulnerable to any invasion or attack from outside, and it would compromise our existence,
Which
right?
was the
So,
point.
yeah, he
That was the
sets
entire point.
red lines, but
Yeah.
there are a lot of cases. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's very dynamic. It's not monolithic. There are like just like in the US, you have the House and the the Congress, and then you have the Supreme Court, and you have two different the main political parties, and then you have third parties, and there's competition among those. We have some similar bodies and interactions with the political parties. We had the two main conservative and reformist ones. The conservatives were called principalists, but then even these political parties have had offshoots, and so it has changed. It's so dynamic. It changes over time depending on things that
Yeah.
happen. The only difference with the US with where other people are going to vote for you who you want me to be the next president. Here we directly vote for our
Let me ask you
president.
this. So, is it the belief in Iran that Israel is going to attack again? Meaning, do they just kind of accept? Well, we know that they're going to blow off any notion of a truce, and they will gear up with the U.S.'s help in doing so.
Yeah, totally. I mean, everyone knows that at some point Israel will restart its attacks against Iran. Israel has never adhered to any ceasefire or truce, even though the what is happening right now is called more like a cessation of aggression than a ceasefire. Because in ceasefire, the two parties like talk, negotiate, and agree on something. Nothing like that has happened. It's just something that happened in unwritten agreements, and then that, okay, for now we'll stop exchange of fire, one who starts, even though they claim that they're defending themselves and they're taking preemptive actions. It's always like, oh, okay, I woke up in the middle of the night and I thought, oh, maybe tomorrow you want to attack me, so somehow Israel always justifies that. So Iran is ready. I think the Iranian system, the Iranian officials know that Israel just waiting for any moment to take advantage of any opportunity to start its attacks again. But as you have seen, it was Israel who basically begged for a ceasefire, and it was Israel that begged the US to come help it, because if without the US help, Israel would not be able to stand. It's not only actually it's not only the US. There are a lot of Western countries and Arab states that are supporting Israel. And like intercepting missiles, Iranian missiles, or at least trying to intercept Iranian missiles to protect Israel, and which is very sad, especially those in the region. It's such a, it's such a humiliation coming from those
It
states in the
is.
US that are basically US puppets, and they are allowing for the genocide that has been going on for more than 2 years in Palestine, and of course the more than 75 years of occupation of the Palestinian lands. And without the US support, without those Arab states supporting Israel, Israel would not even exist anymore, because we have ships and they were promised a better life. They're living on US taxpayers' money. They're not really working hard for it. It's the it's Americans who are paying for that basically. And whenever they feel their life is threatened, and they hear the sirens on a daily basis, they will start leaving the occupied lands.
Hmm.
Haaretz published an opinion poll where it said that more than 40% of the settlers are already considering leaving the country forever. So, because when you still other people, you will have to leave it. You don't really need Iranian missiles to come your way for that colonial project to finish, even though Iranian
Yeah.
missiles are helping
They do help.
with bringing that
They do
colonial
help.
Zionist project in the region closer to an end.
Yeah. Yeah, those missiles help tremendously. I mean, yeah, Israel is a permanent victim. It's like, oh my God, that baby, I had to kill it because I was terrified. And they do that constantly. It's one thing for them to starve and kill people who can't defend themselves. I think they're okay with that. They can drink their cappuccino, they can have their sandwich and croissants or whatever, as people effectively get killed, murdered, starved, etc. But the moment that you have missiles coming your way, okay, well, this is different, right? It's like, hey, we didn't sign up for this. We signed up for murder. We didn't sign up to get killed. In which case, they have their second passport and they just go back to their actual country. So those missiles do help tremendously. They didn't move to Israel to live in sewers and bomb shelters. They thought they were going to be able to steal somebody else's land.
Exactly.
From your point of view, though, like, why did Iran stop? From Iran's point of view, I'm curious. I have my own suspicions, but I want to know why, from Iran's point of view, the way it's been discussed, did they stop?
I think one thing that a lot of people might miss on Iran's strategy and like way of engaging in retaliation is that Iran stands true to like really high moral standards. It's not like the US or Israel. To give you an example, when Saddam started its US-backed war against Iran, the invasion of Iran,
Right.
he was funded, armed, and supported by the US and a few European countries, including, for example, Germany. They provided him with chemical weapons that which he used against Iranians,
Yeah.
and those towns are still affected by those chemical weapons. And so those in military asked Imam Khomeini if we could, in response, use some sort of a similar weapon to defend ourselves or to retaliate. And he said that's not allowed. For the same reason there is a fatwa, which is a religious decree by Ayatollah Khamenei, that says we are not allowed to develop or use nuclear weapons, because we have morals. Even when we wanted to attack the U.S. base or Israel, we have warnings. We gave them uh, enough time to evacuate if they wanted, because we just want to show you that if you decide to attack us, we do have the power to defend ourselves and to retaliate. But
Yeah.
it depends on how much you want to play with fire. You know, if you we try our best to avoid civilian casualties, and I know there are reports, coming from Israel that, oh, Iran attacked civilian areas. Uh, but
Nonsense.
that's not true.
No.
That's not true. I mean, there are evidence. I mean, Israel does not allow reporting. This is what Western journalists have been also complaining about. Israel does not allow reporting on military casualties, and that's why they have to just find one stop near a military base that was targeted by Iran very precisely, and say that, oh, see, Iran is killing civilians, which even those civilians are settlers that are living on stolen lands. And if you don't want to be attacked, okay, don't attack other countries.
Yeah.
That's a very simple solution. Just don't attack other countries. You
Doctor,
are killing our generals, our
no,
yeah.
go ahead. No, go ahead. I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
I interrupted. I just
I mean,
wanted to say,
they're
you already have my,
mhm.
look, I am more critical of Iran for not doing that. Meaning, I understand, I agree with you. Iran fought this very differently than what a Western country would have fought this. You guys avoided hospitals, you avoided reprisal attacks on civilian targets. Israel showed no such restraint. They went after generals, they had decapitation strikes, they went after civilians, they went after hospitals. Iran didn't do that.
Exactly. Yes, and that's why, I mean, Iran probably is also, because we lost many generals, we lost nuclear scientists, we lost civilians, like because the only way Israel can take out those people, our nuclear scientists, is when they are sleeping. Israel can never do that in a battlefield, because they're cowards. They cannot really fight a real war. They have to do it in ways that are, when the other front is sleeping, or in, like, not in the battlefield. But I think Iran also probably is preparing, and re like how would
Rearming.
renewing, yeah, or rearming. I think this gives Iran some time to rearm. And when I have friends who say, oh, why did Iran stop, why are we not targeting, which I understand. I mean, I would love to see more of that, that the Zionist baby killers and war criminals. I would love to see them receive a fair punishment, which I don't know what would be fair for the thousands and thousands of the babies and children and innocent women that they have killed. But I always tell them, I don't think we know more than IRGC. IRGC has been fighting these wars and defending us for decades. They know these criminals. They know what they have in hands, and so if they have decided to stop or pause for a while, they have good reasons for that. It's
Yeah.
not that they are afraid of getting killed or afraid of, losing the battle or
Yeah.
anything. They're definitely preparing for a better response.
To be fair, I don't think, I'll speak for myself as a vulgar American who has a point of view on how wars are fought, because I can only talk about it from our context, the way that we go after countries when we're in a war. If they would have used gas, then gas would have been fair game. If they go after your generals, it's fair game to go after theirs. And it's very possible we would have did it in the very beginning anyway. You guys fought war in a different way that we don't do. And so you may get a lot of Americans that look at that and says, what is Iran doing right now? It's like, what are they doing? And more importantly, why did they stop? And I guess, do you think that part of the reason that you guys stopped is because ultimately you're dealing with two nuclear powers? That you are restrained in how far you can go because of real limits. Those limits being Israel's a nuclear power that showed no issue with murdering 400,000 people. And if they had, let's say, a justification in their own minds to use nukes, they would. And the same thing with the US, that the US, and weirdly enough, I think you have more deterrence with the United States than I do with Israel, because I don't think the US wants 20,000 body bags coming back into the States. In which case, Trump will make a theatrical attack and allow Iran to do something similar so both can back away. But for Israel, though, is the part of the reason for the restraint because they are a nuclear power ultimately, and Iran is not a nuclear power.
Well, I think um, Iran's strength lies in more than just a nuclear power. Yes, there are a lot of people in Iran, among intellectuals and ordinary people, who argue that this is time for us to reconsider that fatwa, the religious decree that bans the building and using of nuclear weapons, and consider developing ours, because we're in a region where India has nuclear weapons, Pakistan has nuclear weapons, Israel has nuclear weapons, U.S. has military bases everywhere and has nuclear weapons. And
Yeah.
it's ludicrous that the only country in Middle East with or with the largest stockpile of nuclear weapons, and the only country that has actually ever used nuclear weapons against other nations, accuse Iran of maybe having nuclear weapons. You
Yeah.
know, it just doesn't make any sense, and
Yeah.
it tells you it's not about nuclear program. And I don't think, I think Israel just wants to see the collapse of a political system in Iran and the Balkanization of the country. That's the biggest threat to them. And it's true that Americans don't want another war. They cannot afford engaging in another war and seeing body bags coming home. But for Israel too, it's an existential threat. Iran is 75 times bigger than Israel. The population of Tehran alone is double the size of the entire occupied lands, the population of occupied lands.
Wow.
So Israel knows it cannot win this war without U.S. help, and Israel knows that if Tehran actually decided to level Tel Aviv and Haifa with to the ground, it could do it in a day. We just haven't we just at this point we don't want to do this, right? So we do have the power. Yes, Israel has no limit in killing people. Actually, like the only war that they win is killing babies.
Yeah.
You know, just massacring babies in incubators and hens in refugee camps and setting them on fire, attacking aid workers while they're helping others. They can't really win an actual war, because you have, as I said, you have settlers who are living on stolen land with families and origins outside those occupied lands, or not from there. And once they feel threatened, they just
Leave.
want to leave.
Yeah.
What's the point of living on those stolen lands? It's not like Iranians. Iranians are from here. We have lived here for thousands of years. We have a civilization that has been going on for centuries and for thousands of years. We do not have another place to go. This is where we are from, and we belong to here, and we want to protect it. But Israelis don't want to protect a stolen land. If they feel unsafe, they just want to go back to the land they belong to. Because what's the point of living on stolen land if you're going to be targeted with missiles on a daily basis,
Exactly.
right? We don't really need to use all of our missiles to finish that colonial Zionist project there. We just need to use a few of them. So while I understand a lot of people are saying that Iran needs to have nuclear weapons, I'm not sure we actually, at this point, we actually need to do that. You know what I mean? I mean, we do have enough to protect ourselves. And it depends on how, like, for the next steps, how Israel wants to play that game. Because as you mentioned, Israel, it's a, you know, Jewish supremacy. It's a white supremacist colonial project that considers non-Jews and non-whites as less of a human being,
Yeah,
and that makes it that like that's totally okay. I mean, even in the religious texts, they say that it's totally okay to kill babies. And to kill the cattles of the enemies and the women's of the enemies. There's like nothing that can stop them from ethnic cleansing and carrying out genocide. So I'm sure they don't mind killing more Iranians, even
they
though
do
they may
not.
claim they do not at all. I mean, and Iranians know that. Iranians, even if they have grievances against their own government, they know that this Zionist entity wants to eliminate them. They don't care about human beings other than the Jewish people that live on occupied lands. So yes, they don't have any limits, but they also know that it would take Iran just a few, maybe a few hundred more missiles to just finish Israel, but Iran hasn't come to that point yet.
Yeah, but I think what I'm getting at is, let me ask it in a different way. Is the reason that Iran went to 60% enrichment because part of the country wanted nukes, the other part didn't want nukes, and 60% was a compromise? Meaning Iran doesn't quite know what it wants to do yet on the nuclear issue. And there's a conversation in Iran on that issue, even though there's a fatwa against it. As you pointed out, the supreme leader is not entirely supreme, and he can maybe not necessarily be overridden, but he does pay attention to the will of the public, especially if the public is saying we need new. I'll tell you this way: I saw a liberal woman for the first time in Iran, hair flowing in the wind, screaming at the top of her lungs that Iran needs nukes. That is an amazing thing. That woman would have been at a protest 2 years
Yes,
ago, screaming at her government. And right now she is screaming, this government needs nukes and it needs them right now. I'm pointing out that there does seem to
exactly.
be a part of the country that clearly is in the mindset, they have nukes, we need nukes. That's our balance. Otherwise,
Yeah,
we're always at a disadvantage in any kind of conflict. You could flatten Haifa, but you can't know Israel's response to doing so, which is, I think, the issue. And I guess that's what I'm asking. Is it that part of the country will feel safer with nuclear weapons, in which case the other part does not? And so you end up with a conversation that takes place with a compromise being the 60% enrichment with the idea of potentially going for, let's say, breakaway speed if need be. Does it make sense? I hope I'm asking that right. I'm trying to get at this notion of whether or not there's
yeah. Mhm.
conversation in Iran about this, which is why they end up with this kind of policy.
Well, I understand your point. The thing is, first of all, I'm not an expert on religious fatwas and decrees, and not an expert on nuclear, program or activities. But what I do know is that, unlike Israel, for us, um, like winning a war does not mean being able to kill more. It does not mean being able to ethnic cleanse other people or carry out a genocide against
Right.
them. For us, winning a war means to not be oppressive, not to eliminate innocent lives. And I should give you an example, especially during these days, because the vast majority of Iranians are Shia Muslims.
Right.
And in Islam, we have Imam Hussein as our role model. Saturday and Sunday is our holiday where we commemorate the sacrifice that Imam Hussein made. And in that war, he, with his very small army, rose up against an oppressive tyranny. And if from a military viewpoint, he did not win that war, but from a human and divine point, he did win that war because he did not do all the oppressive measures and killings that his enemy did. That's the way we win the wars. We win the hearts, right? We win the truth. We want to stay true to our values. It does not, we don't, yes, the military part, having a strategy, having the capabilities to defend ourselves against our enemies is a very important part. We have worked so hard to develop the technologies, to develop the capabilities to win those wars. But that does not mean we will compromise our values. Now, developing nuclear weapon, whether that compromises our values or not, this is not something that I can say because I'm not an expert on
That's
that.
fair.
They have to consider that. They have to study that and see, okay, based on the situation and the context that we have, no, it's necessary, or we are allowed to have it, and then you start considering that. But
Mhm.
Iran, what I think Iran should do and is doing is being prepared to develop nuclear weapons if we need to have them at some point.
Yeah.
If the leader of the revolution, Ayatollah Khamenei, also made it clear that if we wanted to have nuclear weapons, we would not wait for US permission to have it. We would not wait for UN permission to have it. That's not how Iran acts. We would have it a long time ago.
Hmm.
So far, we had not wanted to have it. Now maybe the situation changes because Islamic jurisprudence and scholarship is very dynamic, and it changes based on the needs and requirements of the country's situations and time.
Right.
So yes, there is a possibility that that fatwa could change, but so far it hasn't changed, and people are considering that, people are pushing for that. But I think it's important to remember winning war, like for example, if I ask you, has Israel won in Gaza? Is killing thousands of children, being able to kill thousands of children, winning the war? I don't think that's winning the war.
It kind of depends.
What the
I mean, and let me explain what I mean. It Wars are one dependent on your objective in that war, and Israel's objective is to kill as many people as possible. It wants to evacuate all of those people from that territory so they can steal the land. And so, for them, killing is just a means to an end to accomplish that objective. If you ask me, have they accomplished it yet? No, no, they haven't.
Yeah, but so I mean, if, even from that point of view, yes, they have not achieved it
Right.
fully. But even if you say that yes, they achieved on eliminating a nation, what like it's like saying Hitler achieved its objective, which was like killing people in gas chambers, etc., whatever. I would never call Hitler a winner of the game. Like the same way I would never call Israel the winner of the game, because at the end of the day, killing innocent people and, as I said, ethnic cleansing them is not winning the war. But yes, I think Iran. I mean, I would say I welcome the idea. I really like the idea that the society is so dynamic. Muslim scholars, politicians, decision makers, leaders, everyone is open to studying it and seeing if that uh,
Appropriate.
is a yeah, like a potential that we could have without having compromised our values. Because the same with Imam Hussein and his and the army that fought against him. People would have probably said, "Oh, you're going to lose this war because you have an army of 72 people, and they don't mind killing your babies," which they killed. I mean, the similarities and the inspiration that we get from Imam Hussein's story is just amazing, because the enemy also killed Imam Hussein's 6 months old baby. That's exactly what Israel is doing. And I mean, at that point, everyone thought, okay, Imam Hussein lost the war, but his legacy remained, and history is judging who the actual winner is, because his legacy as someone who rose up against tyranny and oppression continued for centuries, and still people are inspired by him. So this is important, to stand on the right side of the history, as our leader has also said. We want to stand on the right side of this history. It does not mean that we will necessarily win the military war, which I'm sure Iran can do, because so far it has displayed to the world that
Amazing
Iran is totally
capabilities.
capable of doing that. Yes, but that's not our objective. Our objective is to stay true to our values. That's what we want to be. We want to continue a human legacy. We want to be remembered in history uh, as human beings who had lofty values that they uphold, and They did not mind giving their lives for those values, for those human values.
Dr. Sadeqi, 2 points. I don't want to give this impression that I'm saying murdering women and children is a win. I'm
Sure, I
saying
know
that
you don't.
killing an object, like if we're playing chess, the objective is to take the king, and you kill pieces as a means to an end. It's not the goal. The goal is to take the king. And I'm saying military objectives are determined by what you're trying to accomplish. And so when Iran is fighting Israel and they are going after military centers, they're going after Mossad places, the financial district. Okay, that's their objective, to take down the ability for the government to function. That is a win. You were able to win by accomplishing your objectives. In Israel's case in Gaza, they don't have military objectives in the traditional sense. They're just there to kill. It would be like if Hitler in gas chambers. It's like Hitler's, I want to kill as many Jews as possible. Okay, that's what his objective was. Now, he had the secondary objective of taking over all of Europe, but from the standpoint of what he wanted to do to Jews, it was just kill all of them. I'm saying that is where Israel is today with Gaza. Their objective is only to kill as many as possible in the most horrific ways as possible. They have no military objective beyond doing that in Gaza. For Syria, they might have had a different objective, or Hezbollah, they might have had military objectives, but not for Gaza. I hope that makes sense. I don't want you to
Sure.
get this impression that I'm like that monster said that Israel was accomplishing the objective by killing babies. That is not what.
No, I understand. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, of course.
In the second point,
Yeah, I understand what you say.
I I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying about Iran's objectives. Nuclear weapons are not meant to be used. They're meant to be shown, if that makes sense. If you have to use it,
Yeah.
something is going horribly wrong. Usually it's a threat that you have the ability to, like, for example, North Korea would never use a nuke unless it had to use a nuke. But all things being equal, it would never have
Yes.
to use a nuke because everybody knows it has nukes. And so when people are bringing up the nuclear conversation about Iran, they're not talking about Iran using them. They're talking about Iran having them. There's a difference.
Yes.
I just want to
Yeah.
make that clear. It's not like people are saying Iran should get a nuke and use it. No.
Oh
No.
yeah, totally.
Yeah. Okay.
Totally. Even inside Iran, some people have been pointing out that the fatwa bans the using of nuclear weapons,
Right.
not the making of it, which is, that's, as I said, I'm not an expert on religious decrees and stuff, and I can't really judge that. And I think, yes, Iran should consider having a stronger deterrence against the nuclear powers who are war criminals too and
Yeah.
don't mind eliminating the Iranian nation. I'm not saying that I don't have an opinion on whether Iran should definitely have nuclear weapons or not,
That's
because
fair.
I think I'm not an expert to say
No,
that.
that's perfectly
But
fair.
that does not mean, yeah, but that does not mean that Iran doesn't, if, I mean, I would say, yes, I hate nuclear weapons and I don't think the world needs them. But if there are powers like, or if there are countries that already have them, countries that have already used them, like the US, countries that have the largest stockpile and have a record of committing war crimes and killing people,
Yeah.
and Iran, which does not have any record of on any of those things, should have the right to have it too. So the world should not decide for us whether we have the right to have nuclear weapons or not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah. I
that's
totally know what you
important
mean.
in the conversation.
It is
Yeah. So
outrageous.
so US is not going to tell us. Yeah, US is
Exactly.
not going to tell us we should have it or not. The UN even, because after what IAEA has done, the
Yes.
UN watchdog, they're in no position to tell other nations who has the right to have it or not, because you have Israel with the largest nuclear weapons stockpile, and not a member of NPT, and carrying out a genocide and being totally enjoying a total impunity in doing whatever it wants. So if I have considerations whether Iran should or should not have nuclear weapons, it has nothing to do with what the US says, what the UN says.
Yes.
It is a decision made by Iranian people and Iranian leaders. We
Look,
decide what is better for us. If we decide that this is okay to have nuclear weapons, and because we want to have full deterrence against war criminals, then we should have it. Nothing can stop us.
In full transparency, I think it is astonishing that the U.S. is poking its nose in the internal business of Iran on this issue. I don't believe it has anything to do with nukes from the U.S.'s standpoint.
It does not.
We have
Exactly.
knocked over Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya. We have used whatever excuse necessary to do it. And Iran is just the next country that it seeks to do the same thing to. So, one last question before I let you go that just came to mind. And I'm trying to think, is there anything else? I I would tell you I want Iran to succeed in this, which is why some of these questions may be coming from angst. I know my country. I lived here my entire life. And even I think you can tell just in the framing of the questions that I'm asking you, it is ingrained in me in the way that I think about this stuff. You would never hear me say, I want to lose the right way because the point is to win. Some of the stuff is culture different. So, it's not meant to be critical. Like, it's just the way my mind works. It's the way I think.
Yeah, I totally understand. That's the view a lot of people in Iran share. Like, so you're not the only one in the world and in Iran share the same view as you. But I personally would refrain from having a strong opinion whether we should have it or should not have it, although I totally understand
Yeah.
where the desire or the demand to have them comes from. I totally understand that. And I
And,
think that that makes sense.
and by the
You
way,
know what I mean? But
this
I
that's
personally wouldn't say have it.
yeah,
So
that's secondary to nukes. Like that mindset,
exactly.
secondary to nukes. Whether you have them or you don't have them, I want you to win. I want you to succeed in this. In order
I
for
think the
us
world
to,
wants to, right?
yeah, well, in order for us to get this
More
kind
or
of better
less.
world, you kind of need Iran to exist. And I guess that brings me to the last question: this notion of Russia and China. What does Iran see itself in the global order with Russia and China, especially considering you have the U.S. seemingly doing everything in its power to maintain supremacy? And just to give context to that, you have us trying to go after Russia and Ukraine. You have us, I would strongly suggest, pushing the South Korean government to try to effectively overthrow and create a dictatorship in South Korea. You have what seems to be a color revolution in Serbia, a color revolution that tried to take place in Georgia. The thing with Azerbaijan right now is just mind blowing. I don't know what the
It
hell is going
is.
on
It
in
is.
Azerbaijan.
Yeah,
They seem to be working with Israelis in
that's
one sense
crazy.
and working against the Russian interests in another sense, both of which Iran and Russia surround Azerbaijan. So it's amazing to me that they're taking this point of view. Um, but the empire, or I call it that, this notion of the main maintenance of hegemonic control, they seem to be taking action in order to subvert this idea of a new world coming into fruition, like a multipolar world coming into fruition. Whether that world is good or bad, clearly we don't want to come to fruition. We want to maintain unipolarity or unipolar power. How does Iran see itself in this? Does it see itself in association with Russia and China? Does it see itself alone? How does it view itself in this kind of world dynamic?
Well, I think we have had strategic partnership with both China and Russia. There have been cases that they have come to help or have worked together with Iran. Russia and China, the way they have been practicing power and the dynamics of political relations with these two powers has been very different from that of the U.S.
Yes.
U.S. usually exercises power from a domineering point, from a hegemonic point, which one seeks to humiliate and you know subjugate the other nations. So far, that has not been the case with how China and Russia have exercised power.
Right.
But whether or not we could rely on them when it comes to a third world war, or which involves the US, I think Iran understands that we cannot rely on anybody outside fully.
I see.
Yes, Russia, China, North Korea might wants to repel U.S. unipolarity, might want to, help bring this current domineering world order to an end and get their places in a more, kind of more equal or more multipolar world order. But that does not mean that they're totally reliable when it comes to defending ourselves.
I see.
Yes, China and Russia have in some cases helped us, and we might refer to them for maybe obtaining some defense capabilities or technological know-hows. But at the end of the day, we have learned to be as self-reliant as we can. And that's what we're practicing. But at the end of the day, I mean, the entire world needs each other. We all need each other. We have to help each other. But you need, especially when it comes to your defense capabilities, I think self-reliance is the only option, the only thing that decreases your vulnerability and
Mhm.
makes you a stronger nation.
Totally understand. Doctor, thank you for this. I really do appreciate it. There were a few hiccups in the beginning, but everything panned out, everything cleared up. Even the signal cleared up. So, no, I greatly appreciate you coming on for this. Dr.
Okay.
Setareh Sadeqi, I butchered the first name, Setareh Sadeqi.
Yes, pretty good.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. I'll call that a win, and I'll run with that. She is an assistant professor at the Faculty for World Studies, University of Tehran, where she earned her PhD in North American Studies. Her research focuses on the United States-Iran relations, media, narratives, and political communication. She actively bridges academia and public discourse as a co-host of, I think it's called Twice Told Tales podcast, exploring geopolitical dynamics affecting Iran, a frequent speaker and moderator for the international conferences. Dr. Sadeqi is committed to fostering dialogue on Iran's global role. Thank you for this. I really do appreciate it. You be safe, okay?
Thank you.
You have a good one.
Thank you. Thank
All right. We
you too.
thank you. Bye bye.